Wow, how warm and bright the sun is. We truly live on a solar-powered biosphere. Plants and other autotrophs use energy from the sun, along with carbon dioxide and water, to produce carbohydrates in photosynthesis. I wish I could use sunlight to make my own food. And interestingly and amazingly enough, very recent research has developed a technique in which chloroplasts can be inserted into animal cells, enabling these animal cells to photosynthesize for the first time ever. Planimals. Anyhow, for now, plants and not plant-animal hybrids are primary producers and form the base food chain trophic level, and right above that level, heterotrophic primary consumers obtain energy from plants by consuming them, and secondary consumers obtain energy by eating primary consumers, and so forth. According to the first law of thermodynamics, energy cannot be created or destroyed, and this trophic pyramid shows energy flow directionally. With our familiar energy equation, there is a 90% energy loss with each trophic level, and much energy is lost as heat. So while energy flows unidirectionally, matter/nutrients cycle or recycle. How nutrients, which are chemical elements required for organism function, move through the biotic and abiotic world, define the nutrient cycle. Rates at which nutrients enter and leave are referred to as turnover rates, and decomposition by fungi and bacteria detritivores, nutrient cycle heavy lifters, convert or mineralize nutrients from organic to inorganic forms and are significantly influenced by temperature and moisture. Pools, stocks, or reservoirs are where nutrients are stored, and if an ecosystem stores a nutrient more, it is referred to as a sink ecosystem, and if it releases more than it stores, it is referred to as a source ecosystem. We'll consider 4 key nutrient cycles in ecosystems today, that being phosphorus, carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, as well as the hydrological cycle. But it should be noted that other elements such as calcium or sulfur can cycle and can be traced through ecosystems too. We'll look now at source sink dynamics and anthropogenic effects in the phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus, unlike other nutrients such as carbon and nitrogen, is not very present in the atmosphere and is contained in the rocks and sediments of the Earth's crust from geological ages past. The phosphorus cycle is very slow, and phosphorus can have a turnover rate of thousands of years. Phosphorus, along with nitrogen, is a limiting factor for life because of this turnover rate and because it is largely unavailable in an insoluble, occluded form. Yet it is indispensable for life, as phosphorus is part of many cellular molecules, including DNA, RNA, and phospholipids. Phosphorus enters the terrestrial cycle mainly through weathering of apatite phosphate minerals, which are dissolved into the soil, and from marine system geological uplift plate tectonics. Plants absorb soluble inorganic phosphate from the soil, and symbiotic fungi and associated bacteria, which are several times better at acquiring phosphorus, assist in this process. Arbuscular mycorrhizae produce the enzyme phosphatase to release organic phosphate during decomposition. 20 to 30% of phosphorus in the soil is from microbes and fungi detritivores. For phosphorus and other biogeochemicals, Michaelis-Menten kinetics are used for nutrient uptake models. V0 is the nutrient influx, Vmax is the maximum nutrient influx, and S is the nutrient concentration in solution. The terrestrial phosphorus cycle pattern follows that of the general nutrient cycle and makes its way through food webs in which phosphorus is concentrated at higher levels compared to the surrounding environment. In the aquatic system, phosphorus, again with the aid of bacteria, cycles through phytoplankton, kelp, and fish. Anthropogenic effects from mined phosphorus used in fertilizer severely disrupt this dynamic, leading to eutrophication/excess phytoplankton blooms affecting freshwater and marine ecosystems.
Next up, we have something a lot of you may be familiar with, that being the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle, like many of the other resource cycles, is not a singular loop, and instead is a collection of many environmental cycles all culminating together at different points. In general, the largest pools of carbon are found in the ocean, atmosphere, inside plants and animals, as well as in the lithosphere, subterranean, and terrestrial environments. Atmospheric carbon can be found predominantly in two forms. These forms are carbon dioxide and methane. These two forms can be absorbed by plants during photosynthesis. In addition to this, atmospheric CO2 can be absorbed into the ocean, dissolving and reacting with salt water in order to produce carbonic acid, which contributes to ocean acidification. This is an immense issue, as it lowers seawater pH and reduces carbonate ion availability, which is essential for marine organisms like corals, shellfish, and plankton to build shells and skeletons. Acidification also impairs fish behavior and physiology, threatening fisheries and the livelihoods dependent on them. Ocean acidification even reduces the ocean's ability to absorb CO2, exacerbating climate change as well as all the previously mentioned issues. The ocean is actually the largest site of carbon exchange on the planet, containing over 50 times more carbon than in the atmosphere. This is due both to the previously mentioned process of ocean acidification, as well as an abundance of photosynthetic algae, which utilize CO2 in the same way that terrestrial plants do. Going back to the CO2 used by plants during photosynthesis, these same plants also store CO2 within themselves. Herbivores can then ingest these plants, allowing themselves to pass them through as waste, once again releasing methane as a byproduct. This methane is then absorbed back into the atmosphere. While this newly reabsorbed atmospheric methane will not stay nearly as long as carbon would, it is much more efficient at trapping heat, explaining why methane emissions are such a huge deal in global warming. Furthermore, many decomposers found in the soil also release CO2 and methane back into the atmosphere, similar to the way animals do in waste secretion. Lithospheric carbon also plays a much smaller role in carbon cycling. Resources such as coal, natural gas, oil, and even limestone deposits all contain carbon. The combustion of many of these fossil fuels releases carbon into the atmosphere, further cycling it back into the other processes mentioned. As mentioned before, human influence has an immense effect on the carbon cycle. Combustion of fossil fuels releases immense amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. Production of clinker, which is frequently used in the production of most cements, has similar effects, especially when considering the scale at which it is used around the world. Finally, deforestation and logging have had similarly substantial effects on atmospheric CO2. Logging and deforestation significantly disrupt the carbon cycle by reducing the number of trees that absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during photosynthesis. When the trees are removed, less CO2 is captured, leading to higher concentrations of the greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. Additionally, decaying wood or burning trees during deforestation releases stored carbon back into the air, further amplifying atmospheric CO2 levels. This imbalance contributes to global warming and climate change. The loss of forest ecosystems also diminishes soil stability and biodiversity, reducing the land's capacity to sequester carbon efficiently.
Today I'm going to talk about the oxygen cycle and how oxygen moves through the environment in different forms to sustain plants, animals, and ecosystems. First up is photosynthesis. Plants take in carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight to produce food and release oxygen, replenishing the atmosphere and supporting life. Next, transpiration. As plants release water vapor into the air, they influence the water cycle and maintain the conditions necessary for photosynthesis and oxygen production. Then, respiration. Both plants and animals use oxygen to break down food for energy, producing carbon dioxide and water as byproducts that re-enter the oxygen cycle, ensuring its continuity. Decomposition also plays a critical role. When plants and animals die, decomposers like fungi and bacteria break them down, consuming oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide and nutrients. This process recycles organic matter and sustains ecosystems. Combustion is another step. When wood, fossil fuels, or other organic materials are burned, oxygen is consumed and carbon dioxide is released. While natural fires are part of the cycle, excessive fossil fuel combustion disrupts the balance, contributing to climate change. Oxygen's role in the water cycle cannot be overlooked. Dissolved oxygen in rivers, lakes, and oceans sustains aquatic life through respiration, while decomposers in water rely on it to break down organic material. Weathering adds another layer to the cycle. Certain rocks contain oxygen-bound minerals such as carbonates and sulfates. Over time, these rocks break down through chemical reactions, releasing oxygen into the environment. Though small in scale, this process is an important part of the overall cycle. The oceans act as both an oxygen sink and a source. At the surface, they absorb oxygen from the atmosphere, which dissolves into the water and supports marine life. Marine plants and phytoplankton perform photosynthesis, producing oxygen that is released back into the atmosphere. Oceans also store and redistribute oxygen, maintaining global oxygen levels. Now let's see how this cycle is impacted in real life. Ocean warming-driven deoxygenation is a critical issue. Warmer water holds less oxygen and mixes less effectively with deeper oxygen pore layers. At the same time, increased temperatures raise the oxygen demand of marine organisms. This imbalance leads to less oxygen availability for marine life, highlighting the importance of preserving the oxygen cycle.
Nitrogen is the fourth most abundant element after hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon, but is still an important nutrient for bodily functions such as amino acid, protein, and nucleic acid production. The nitrogen cycle is a critical component of the biogeochemical cycles in the ocean and on land, but is often a limiting factor as well. The ocean cycle is a central feature of the biosphere since it connects the land and the atmosphere. Therefore, the chemical reactions in the oceans have large effects on the nitrogen in the atmosphere and in the soil. Most nitrogen enters ecosystems through bacteria and plant roots that convert nitrogen gas to ammonia in the soil via nitrogen fixation. Other types of bacteria can convert the ammonia to nitrate and nitrite so that it can be used by other bacteria and plants. This nitrogen returns to the soil when organisms release waste or die. Nitrogen in the soil is released back into the atmosphere through denitrification, which includes bacteria breaking down nitrate and nitrite into nitrogen gas. The study of the nitrogen cycle uses the ratios between the stable isotopes of nitrogen-14 and nitrogen-15 to understand many of these processes throughout the cycle. For open ocean nitrogen cycles, nitrogen in the atmosphere undergoes nitrogen fixation to become ammonium. This ammonium can be taken up by phytoplankton to enter the microbial loop between phytoplankton and viruses or grazers. The ammonium is then converted into nitrate by nitrification. Ammonium that is present at lower depths can go through nitrification or denitrification as it travels to higher levels and will form nitrous oxide, which can be released into the atmosphere along with the nitrogen gas. Nitrogen gas in the atmosphere is safe. However, high levels of nitrous oxide in the atmosphere act as greenhouse gases, which can promote climate change by trapping infrared radiation and depleting the ozone layer.
Moving on to a cycle that plays a part in the carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur cycles, the water cycle. This cycle shows the movement of water throughout the earth and the atmosphere and involves water in all of its phases, solid, liquid, and gas. Many organisms need fresh water to survive, so this cycle is crucial in every ecosystem. Around the earth, only about 2.5% of the water is fresh water, and less than 1% of that fraction is available to use on the surface. But that's not the point. Let's get into the cycle. The basic steps are liquid water, like a lake or pond, evaporating into vapor. Vapor condenses into clouds, and clouds precipitate into rain or snow. What about from there? On land, liquid water can move across through runoff, move through the ground by infiltration or percolation, and rest in the ground either as groundwater or in aquifers. From this groundwater, plants can uptake and use it, eventually evaporating into the atmosphere through transpiration. On less common occasions, ice can directly become vapor through sublimation, and likewise, vapor can become ice through desublimation. Think about dry ice. Modern papers can be seen focusing on the water cycle and how climate change is impacting it. For example, a study from 2024 argues that dry ecosystems specifically are experiencing major changes in their water cycle. This study claims up to a 7.4% increase in precipitation from 1961 to 2018 in these dry ecosystems. These anthropomorphically caused increases can lead to ecosystem destruction and major flooding. So, the water cycle holds a heavy impact on ecosystems worldwide. Needless to say, the deeply connected cycles we talked about are all vital to an ecosystem. When they work well, ecosystems' health and diversity are sustained. However, as we saw in some of the examples, ecosystems suffer when the cycles start to get disrupted or malfunction. Knowing about the foundational aspects of an ecosystem can help people better understand the various parts of a healthy or unhealthy habitat. Thank you so much for watching.